Decision Canada. Digging in, debating and discussing the election issues that matter to you. Issues that connect, issues that divide. The politicians have their platform. This is yours. Decision Canada on the Chorus Radio Network.
Well, welcome back. I'm Danielle Smith here at 770 CHQR in Calgary. We are joined in our Decision Canada coverage with a simulcast with John McComb, talk show host with 980 CKNW in Vancouver. John, such a pleasure to talk to you today.
How are you, Danielle? It's always fun to do these, and looking forward to the next hour.
Let me tell you how I am today. I'm a little bit nervous because, you know, our two provinces, our citizens used to love each other. I remember all kinds of positive experiences I've had in Vancouver, in British Columbia. My parents have a trailer in Sicamous, and now there seems to be a growing hostility, and I want to get back to being friends again.
Hostility over what, Danielle?
I can't possibly imagine. Let me tell you, you should tell. You know, I started this in Hamilton, and I didn't like the answer that I got, and so I'm kind of curious to get the answer from you too.
Oh, are you still talking about that crazy pipeline?
That crazy pipeline.
Oh, man, that's never going to happen.
Oh, my goodness.
That's never going to happen.
Tell me, how does your audience feel about Alberta these days? Because when I have seen these kind of simulcasts done before, Linda Steele and Angela Kokot did one, I was surprised at how many sort of conservative-minded business-type people you have listening to you. What is your audience like? Do they tend to be more skeptical?
We love Alberta. This whole made-up thing about the pipeline and, you know, boycotting the wine and all that stuff, it's just political nonsense. The fact is that a majority of British Columbians, in the last poll I saw in June, 54% of British Columbians want to see the pipeline built.
Is that more in interior BC? Because I get the sense that Vancouver, especially Burnaby, is so much more divided.
Yeah. Well, of course, Burnaby, because that's where the terminal is. So you're going to get, people who are living right around the terminal don't want to see the terminal expanded because it's going to mean more traffic. It's going to affect, neighborhoods that way. But I think generally throughout the province, people look at this and say, yes, we have to move our natural resources. What I'm not afraid of. What I see potentially happening is that this thing is delayed and delayed and delayed to the point where, we had 100,000 people in the streets the other week, protesting about climate change. If this thing keeps being put off and put off, I wonder if there's going to be the political will to get it done.
Can you maybe tell us a bit more about the perspective in Burnaby? I think that they've got two legitimate concerns, but I just don't know that there's a way around them. One of them being that we keep talking about how this pipeline is being expanded along an existing route. But if I understand it, going through Burnaby, there's actually some new areas and new roads that are going to be dug up to lay pipe. And then the other one is that the expansion of the tank farm is causing some concern because now there's been so much additional population that have been built up around the additional site. Am I getting those two issues sort of nailed?
Yes, the twinning of the pipeline is they're not in all conditions. They're not going to be right next to each other. They're going to go in different directions, what have you, depending on the landscape. So yeah, there are some new areas where the pipe might have to run. The old pipeline is 50 plus years old, so a lot has happened up on top, since then. And the other thing is the storage tanks, which what's happened, of course, is Burnaby has expanded and grown up the side of Burnaby Mountain, which is where Simon Fraser University sits on the top of it. And the tank farm has been there for years and years and years, no serious problems. Now people, of course, much more aware, much more concerned, don't want to see it expanded because though there hasn't been a huge catastrophe, people, of course, worry about a huge catastrophe.
Do people connect the fact that this expansion will give more security of gasolines and diesel supply to Vancouver? I mean, we're very aware that the Trans Mountain Pipeline is unique in this way. It can transport bitumen, yes, but it can also transport crude, so it can feed your Parkland refinery, but it also can transport refined product. And so if we were able to twin it, have more capacity, that allows for us to bring more refined product to the Lower Mainland so that you're not facing gas prices of, they think they're about $1.40 right now. I should tell you, we're only at 95 cents here. Is there a connection between those two? Because we see the connection immediately that, gee, we could mutually help each other. You guys are worried about gas prices. We got the solution right here.
Yeah, it's $1.61, by the way.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, you got those extra taxes in the Lower Mainland as well, those extra carbon taxes.
Yes. Well, so here's the thing. We hear different explanations for what is actually going to be moving through the pipeline. As I understand it, 80% of the pipeline has already been leased, if you will, and the product is going to be bitumen flowing to the coast. Now, there's some questions about the promise of cheaper gasoline. There's a lot of skepticism around whether indeed British Columbia and the Lower Mainland, Metro Vancouver, will actually benefit, and whether prices will come down. There's a lot of skepticism because we're being, as has Alberta, we've been promised, and frankly, there isn't a lot of faith in the people who are making the promises.
Well, that's too bad, because now that it's owned by the federal government, you would think that could be one of the negotiation points, is that the first priority is to make sure that the Lower Mainland has enough fuel to meet the needs of the local residents and businesses. I don't know why that couldn't be part of the negotiation. Would that get us to a yes? Would that get us closer to a yes?
Maybe because it's Justin Trudeau who would be making that commitment, and we know how he is on commitment sometimes. So.
Well, especially since he's also trying to balance off the fact that he's facing a really serious challenge from the Greens and from Jagmeet Singh on the issue of climate policy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I mean, if somebody would from the federal government would put in writing that, yes, the first priority will be reducing gasoline prices in Metro Vancouver. The first thing out of the line is going to be gasoline, and we'd all stand around and jump up and down and sing, and it would be happy days. But people don't believe that's going to happen.
All right, John, I'm going to work on that on this end. We'll see if we can get that commitment for you, because that's how strongly we feel about how important it is. Because I think we can see the mutual benefit here, honestly. But let me ask you. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
With the concern that's being expressed about climate change here in BC, it's 30, I guess almost 40% of people consider it to be the major issue. How do we reconcile these two realities? How do we reconcile a pipeline shipping bitumen to other places versus climate change and the increasing, if you will, concern about what's happening with our planet?
John, I'm going to solve that problem for you too, but we're first going to have to take a quick pause so that we don't run out of time. I'm Danielle Smith.
What a great tease. What a great tease.
It's going to sound like a Dodge, right? I'm Danielle Smith with 770 CHQR in Calgary. We're speaking here with John McComb, talk show host with 980 CKNW, Global News Radio in Vancouver. We'll continue our discussion right after this on Chorus Radio.
Focusing on the issues that matter to you.
The attention of Canadians is highest right now.
Now, the overall message of the Conservative campaign is around affordability.
Global News cuts through the election noise.
Do you feel that you could support a Liberal government in a minority situation led by Justin Trudeau?
And Singh is clearly appealing to those progressive voters.
It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.
I was born to be great, not about the fast cars, the big dreams and names, and the bright lights, the best nights are waiting for you. Gotta be who you are, got those dreams that big, you're gonna be a star. Everyone wants to be like a me, no
journalism isn't just about covering the story, it's about exposing the truth. That's why we dug into the dirty money fueling Canada's deadly drug epidemic. Why we uncovered the government's secret plan to harvest your personal financial data. And how we found crooked pharmacists in Ontario.
And but for a Global News report, Canadians would never know.
Investigative reporting that leads to real change. Global News.
The world moves way too fast, and we're all so busy, it's easy to get lost in the chaos of the news cycle. So let's slow it down. I'm Tamara Kandaker, host of the new daily podcast, Wait, There's More. It's a deeper look at the news of the day, from politics to pop culture. We're exploring new angles, asking tough questions, and talking to the people directly affected by those stories. Get the Global News daily podcast, Wait, There's More, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Global National with Donna Friesen, winner of the 2019 Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor.
Let's start with Jihadi Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global. Focusing on the issues that matter to you. Global News cuts through the election noise. It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.
A deep dive into the election issues that matter to you. This is Decision Canada on the Chorus Radio Network.
Good morning, I'm John McComb at CKNW in Vancouver. We are connected with Danielle Smith at CHQR in Calgary for a little tete-a-tete, if you will, over the Rockies, trying to sort out some of the issues in this election campaign. Danielle, before the break, you promised me an answer on how we reconcile global warming with exporting Alberta bitumen. Have at it.
Okay, number one, I would say we've got to get back to the science. I do not know how it is the Extinction Rebellion people seized the debate. There are no scientists saying that we are going to go extinct in 10 years if we stop using fossil fuels. That is not in the IPCC reports. I've read the IPCC reports. They aren't even as declarative as our environment minister about the impact on flooding or fires. There's probabilities, but in most cases, they're low probabilities. So most of what we're hearing about the issue is hysteria being pushed forward by extreme environmental groups. Number one, let's get back to the science, because when you get back to the science, you realize we've got a little bit more time to sort this out. And you can accomplish so much in 50 years or 100 years. If you try to cram everything into 10 years, that's where it becomes impossible. So that'd be number one. But number two, I may be in the minority on this, but I think Andrew Scheer has the exact right plan for how Canada gets to net zero emissions. And I think net zero is the right target, is the target Europe is moving towards, is the target other partners are moving towards. Because when you start talking about net zero, you start thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to keep on driving my car, then I've got to find a way to offset that. And how do you offset it? Well, you invest in technology for carbon capture. You export LNG to China so that they can use that instead of powering their electricity with coal. And you look at sequestration, like planting 2 billion trees, or managing your grasslands and your croplands so that the soil is sequestering more carbon. So it strikes me that we could, in Canada, achieve that net zero goal very easily. And I'll just give you one example. I spoke with a business executive earlier in the week who said LNG Canada should be able to reduce carbon dioxide emissions in China by 60 to 90 megatons. We only produce about 700 megatons. If you add the wood fiber LNG, Kitimat LNG, and Pieridae, their plan on the East Coast, we get pretty close to achieving our targets, but still maintaining our standard of living.
Well, let me tell you about an interview I did earlier this morning on my show. I talked with a fellow by the name of John Helen, and he's the mayor of the Lax Kw'alaams First Nations up on the BC coast. They have put together a coalition with the Haisla Nation and the Nishka, And they came out this morning and said that they're going to get involved in the climate change discussion because they are fully 100% behind LNG exports to other countries that are still burning coal. Their only sort of condition is that the LNG projects be supplied with electricity, renewable electricity to run their operations.
Wow, that is music to my ears. That's fantastic.
It is a huge announcement because all we ever hear, of course, is that, well, you know, First Nations are just totally opposed to any resource development. That is simply not the case.
Well,
that is not true.
It's funny because last night, Vivian Krause was in town with her new documentary, Over the Barrel, talking about how essentially all we've benefited from Canadians fighting against Canadians being spurred on by extreme environmental groups is that we've punished communities, and the communities that have been punished the most have been the First Nations communities. They come along saying, hey, look, block all of this development and there'll be all these tourism jobs. Well, the tourism jobs never show up. They're left in poverty and despair. Last night, Chief Roy Jones, also from one of the villages of the Haida, he came out, he was in the video, and he said, we've got to start looking at economic development opportunities for our people. And if we can see a partnership between reasonable environmentalists who understand that LNG is part of the global answer to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, First Nations is an important partner in development, so to benefit, for mutual benefit, and both British Columbia and Alberta have a lot of natural gas. We might be able to get back to being friends again, John.
I still think we're friends. I don't, you know, I'm a peace, love, and hippie flowers kind of guy. I have nothing against Alberta. I understand how people in Alberta feel because the economy, the floor dropped out of the economy, and people are suffering. For whatever reason, BC's economy has been humming along fairly nicely, but nobody wants to see, you know, other Canadians or next door neighbors in particular suffer. We just have got to figure out a way to make this work, to meet the greenhouse gas goals, and if nothing else, ignore the alarmists and the people who are screeching that. I interviewed an environmental, the blockade people, the Burrard Street Bridge the other morning.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, we have to get to net zero by 2025.
Absurd.
And I said, what? At what cost?
Well, and John, they want to get to net zero by 2025, only relying on wind and solar. It's impossible. Someone's just done a calculation saying if we were to try to convert the entire planet to a non-CO2 producing fuel, the only one that becomes really available is nuclear, and you'd have to build a plant a day from now for the next 5 years or something before we could even get to that target. It's impossible. I mean, when you think about the regulatory process of getting things improved, when you think of the intermittency of wind and solar, they may be a contributor to the overall electricity picture, but they can't be the thing we solely rely on. You know what I should do? I should just make sure that people know what our numbers are, because we're going to get into calls pretty soon. 403-974-8255 is the number to call here. You can also call your regular number in Vancouver, 604-280-9898. Did you want to finish your thought on that? I do, yeah. Did you want to finish your thought on that, John? I interrupted you there.
Well, to me, you know, the goal here is not to necessarily come off of all carbon for all time. What we have to do is reduce the amount of emissions that we're, you know, putting in the atmosphere or whatever. Some people believe it, some people don't. Whatever the deal is, that's the direction we're headed. We just have to reduce. We don't have to get rid of every source of carbon emissions on the planet. We just got to knock them down.
Exactly.
A bit
Reduce
and live within that,
and offset where you can't through things like carbon sequestration and new technologies. Hey, just one more thing I wanted to ask you, just quickly, lay of the land that you've got in British Columbia, because you've probably seen the polls. We're looking at 34 out of 34 seats going Conservative in Alberta. There's a couple where you might get one NDP and one Liberal, but we're pretty well unified behind one political party. What do you see happening in your well, I guess your area, mostly the Lower Mainland?
It is very tight between the Conservatives and the Liberals. The projections at this point have the Conservatives picking up 16 seats. They currently have 10. The Liberals dropping 3 or 4 seats to 13 or 14. And the NDP taking a real hit from, they have 15 seats now, down to 8.8, so 9 seats. we'll see what happens with Mr. Singh. But I tell you what, let's take a break, get those phone calls set up, and we'll talk to our respective audiences as we continue here on the Chorus Radio Network.
Focusing on the issues that matter to you.
The attention of Canadians is highest right now.
Now, the overall message of the Conservative campaign is around affordability.
Global news cuts through the election noise.
Do you feel that you could support a Liberal government in a minority situation led by Justin Trudeau?
And Singh is clearly appealing to those progressive voters.
It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.
The world moves way too fast, and we're all so busy, it's easy to get lost in the chaos of the news cycle. So let's slow it down. I'm Tamara Kandaker, host of the new daily podcast, Wait, There's More. It's a deeper look at the news of the day, from politics to pop culture. We're exploring new angles, asking tough questions, and talking to the people directly affected by those stories. Get the Global News daily podcast, Wait, There's More, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
I was born to be great, not about the fast cars, the big dreams and names, and the bright lights, the best nights are waiting for you. Gotta be who you are, got the dreams that big, you're gonna be a star. Everyone wants to be like a meanwhile, got the song repeating like a go! It ain't about the things that you got to say, you know you gotta find every single day.
Good journalism isn't just about covering the story. It's about exposing the truth. That's why we dug into the dirty money fueling Canada's deadly drug epidemic. Why we uncovered the government's secret plan to harvest your personal financial data. And how we found crooked pharmacists in Ontario.
And but for a Global News report, Canadians would never know.
Investigative reporting that leads to real change. Global News.
Let's start with Jihadi Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson. Sundays on Global. Global National with Donna Friesen, winner of the 2019 Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor. Focusing on the issues that matter to you. Global News cuts through the election noise. It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.
I was born to be great, not about the fast cars, the big dreams and names, and the bright lights, the best nights are waiting for you. Gotta be who you are, got the dreams that big, you're gonna be a star. Everyone wants to be like a meanwhile, got the song repeating like a go! It ain't about the things that you got to say, you know you gotta find
focusing on the issues that matter to you.
The attention of Canadians is highest right now.
Now, the overall message of the Conservative campaign is around affordability.
Global News cuts through the election noise.
Do you feel that you could support a Liberal government in a minority situation led by Justin Trudeau?
And Singh is clearly appealing to those progressive voters.
It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.
Hear your favorite Global News personalities on Calgary's best news radio, the Global News Hour, nightly at 6 on 770 CHQR.
Taking a deep dive into the election issues that matter to you. This is Decision Canada on the Chorus Radio Network.
All right, we are back with our Decision Canada simulcast with CKNW's John McComb. I'm Danielle Smith here at 770 CHQR in Calgary. John, I got a full board, and I just want to say I got some angry listeners, so I just want you to sort of hear what they have to say. And I think maybe we'll get the same back in return. I think this is going to be very therapeutic for people, just to be able to talk it out. Maybe we'll get to some conclusions.
Let me get my number out, 604-280-9898 in the CKNW listening audience. If you want to jump on the phones, please do. A couple of lines open, 604-280-9898, and talk to our friends, our neighbors in Alberta.
All right, let me just tell you, one of my regular listeners says this. So far, all I've heard from these countrywide town halls is more reasons for us to take our ball and go home. We can solve Canada's global emissions footprint and per capita emissions problem right now. Separate. Then the oil sands isn't such a blight on the Canadian progressive virtue signaling landscape, and we can go back to making money for the people of a grateful nation, one that values our input enough to let us produce for it. So that gives you a bit of a sense of how beleaguered Albertans are feeling.
You know what? The Western separation thing has been around for a very, very, very long time. And with all of the greatest respect to your listener, it never goes anywhere, because people understand that this country is a country, it is a better country united than it is divided.
All right, let's see if we can work on some unity here. We got Lauren, we got Rhonda, we got Mark, we got Andy, we got Mike on my end of things. I'll go to Lauren first, and then if we can go back and forth between the two, I think it'd be perfect. Let's hear what Lauren has to say. Lauren, what's your thoughts today with me and John McComb? Lauren.
Yeah, hi there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to talk about his point that he made where BC economy is just humming along, and how hypocritical that is of the southeast corner of BC coal. Such a blight on that province, and then they're attacking our oil and gas industry.
Thanks for that, Lauren. We do hear that a lot, John, that you're worried about tanker movements, but you're not worried about all the cruise ships. I think there's some 25,000 ship movements in the Puget Sound is the number that I heard recently. You also have the biggest coal export off the coast there, Westridge, and yet if you're worried about global greenhouse gas emissions, natural gas would be such a better replacement for coal. Is there an awareness that there seems to be a hypocrisy there?
Guilty is charged. All of that is true. We have coal trains running. We have coal exports running via ship. We have coal exports running from the United States that export coal off of our coast. That is absolutely true. And so if we're hypocrites, but that is allowed to happen. The thing about the cruise ships is a lot of them have, when they're in port here now, they are hooked up to electricity, but they still burn, bunker C, which is one of the dirtiest fuels commercially. And so, we're not angels out here. We're in an economy, and have been for 100 years, based on, fuel.
All right,
gasoline.
Lauren, oil, I'm hearing John saying.
So,
I'm hearing John say your point's well taken.
we gotta move away from it.
All right. Do you have someone there you want to get on the line?
I do. Let's talk to Mike. Hey, Mike. Good morning.
Salutations, and thanks for addressing this. 2 points, please. Oil is too precious to waste on transportation and heating and cooling. We burn 100 million barrels a day. We have 130 to 150 years of reserves, and there's so many things in our civilization that only oil can do. 29% of a barrel goes to electricity. That is a waste, and the 40% for transportation. Yes, we need alternatives, but stopping climate change is going to kill the planet because we have to use so much oil to build wind and solar that it triples our emissions. The second point is, with wind and solar, we're taking so much energy out of the environment under these plans. What happens to our environment when we take out? Do we think it's with no effect that we can take the sun and the wind out of the environment?
Mike, what do you think the solution is?
I'm not understanding what you mean about taking the sun out of the environment.
You are going to be diverting, there's a Shockley quasar limit, which is 33.8%. That's the maximum energy you can take out of a sunlight to develop electricity. That is taken out by that solar panel. It doesn't land on the ground. It doesn't support plants. It doesn't support the wind. And there's the Betz limit. You can only get 60% of the kinetic energy out of the wind. You take that wind out of the environment. What happens to our environment? Where are the studies to show the changes in cloud patterns, temperature patterns from taking all this energy in real time? It took years to make the oil that you burn in a second in your car. Yet we want to take that amount of energy out in real time.
All right, Mike, I think we got your point. Thank you. I don't know what to make of it.
All right, maybe he says hydroelectricity and natural gas are the answer. Maybe we can find some common ground there. We got Rhonda on the line. Rhonda, go ahead. What's your thought today?
My comment is in defense of LNG. I feel like there's so many countries that have resources that could develop them but don't have the education or the knowledge to develop them. They're using dung for fuel and for cooking sources. Mm-hmm. And people like that, how many of those people in a year are passing away due to the fumes from those? Wouldn't it be better if we could help them develop their resource and help them, even if use coal or LNG is a better benefit to these countries than what they're doing now? And would that not reduce global emissions in the world scheme? Because we all know that GHGs and CO2 does not just stay in the country it's in.
Right.
Gases and all this stuff is moving around constantly. It's wind, it's current, things move. So they're not staying in one country. Like the ones in Canada aren't just staying in Canada.
Rhonda, great points. And it's 4 million people that die a year from indoor air pollution. I think I've interviewed one of your researchers at the University of British Columbia who tracks that. So getting clean natural gas so they can cook their food and heat their homes will reduce indoor air pollution and also global greenhouse gas emissions. I do get the sense, though, John, that there's still that natural gas isn't seen to be part of the clean energy mix in British Columbia. Am I misreading that?
Because the environmentalists will tell you that, well, it's still a carbon-based fuel. It's still a fossil fuel, and we need to get away from all of those, and we don't. We need to reduce the amount of carbon that we're putting in the air, but we don't need to go away from it completely. We just have to reduce it a bit, as I said earlier.
All right.
So I think there's so much propaganda and so much misinformation and just so much BS that confuses people. No wonder they don't want to talk about it or engage.
I'm glad we're talking about it. I got a couple more calls here. Do you have one on your end, or should I go to Mark?
Let me get Andrew in here. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning. I deal with the distraction first, which is the point regarding our thermal coal exports. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. We should be ending that. I think what's important for Albertans who are, upset about the way things have been going in the so-called southeast corner of BC here, is really that it's about a local environmental concern. The climate change issue is the broader issue, but it's the adding 400 tankers to the south coast, I think, is what the real concern is here. And yes, we have cruise ships. Yes, we have or container ships, coming in, but they're not Aframax class tankers filled to the gills with dilbit, and that's really where the concern comes from.
Well, Andrew, I don't know if you've looked at the plan for when these tankers, if they start running, when they start running. They're going to shut down the Burrard Inlet, Vancouver Harbor. Is going to be no ship traffic will be allowed, while the tanker is escorted through the harbor with 3 tugs, I believe, to its point up in Burrard Inlet in Burnaby. They're going to shut down all the shipping traffic, even the sea bus back and forth.
I didn't know that. That's good information. Just to avoid any potential that there might be a collision.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, John, that's also a selling feature. And this is the other reason, I think, why Albertans are frustrated at the tanker ban off the North Coast. And this is one of the points that Chief Roy Jones was making yesterday, is Port of Prince Rupert might have actually been a better place, or Kitimat might have been a better place to be having these tanker movements, as opposed to the crowded inlet that you've got there. But that's a conversation if we have a different government. We have to take a quick pause again. I'm Danielle Smith here at 770 CHQR in Calgary. We're speaking with John McComb, talk show host at 980 CKNW Global News Radio. 403-974-8255 is the number to call here, as well 604-280-9898. We continue with calls after this on Chorus Radio.
Focusing on the issues that matter to you.
The attention of Canadians is highest right now.
Now, the overall message of the Conservative campaign is around affordability.
Global News cuts through the election noise.
Do you feel that you could support a Liberal government in a minority situation led by Justin Trudeau?
And Singh is clearly appealing to those progressive voters.
It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.
I was born to be great, not about the fast cars, the big dreams and names, and the bright lights, the best nights are waiting for you. Gotta be who you are, got the dreams that big, you're gonna be a star. Everyone wants to be like a meanwhile, got the song repeating like a go, let's go! It ain't about the things that you got to say, you know you gotta find every single day.
Global National with Donna Friesen, winner of the 2019 Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor.
Let's start with Jihadi Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global. Good journalism isn't just about covering the story. It's about exposing the truth. That's why we dug into the dirty money fueling Canada's deadly drug epidemic. Why we uncovered the government's secret plan to harvest your personal financial data. And how we found crooked pharmacists in Ontario.
And but for a Global News report, Canadians would never know.
Investigative reporting that leads to real change. Global News.
The world moves way too fast, and we're all so busy, it's easy to get lost in the chaos of the news cycle. So let's slow it down. I'm Tamara Kandaker, host of the new daily podcast, Wait, There's More. It's a deeper look at the news of the day, from politics to pop culture. We're exploring new angles, asking tough questions, and talking to the people directly affected by those stories. Get the Global News daily podcast, Wait, There's More, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Focusing on the issues that matter to you. Global News cuts through the election noise. It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.
Taking a deep dive into the election issues that matter to you. This is Decision Canada on the Chorus Radio Network.
And good morning. morning, everyone. I'm John McComb in Vancouver at CKNW. We are connected to Danielle Smith at CHQR in Calgary for a little discussion about politics and about pipelines as we approach Election Day in just about a week and a half or so. Danielle, I'd like to read an email from a listener named Zach. And Zach says, I'd like to express my solidarity with the hardworking men and women of Alberta. I'd also like to let them know they have sympathizers to their cause in the Lower Mainland who understand the history and present-day reality of our resource-based economy. They should know we aren't all crazy green-huffing hippies down here, and there are lots of us who understand their pain, and we shouldn't be ashamed of our industry-based economy. Best regards from Zach.
But John,
I think Zach speaks for a lot of people who live here.
That's awesome. I've got goosebumps. I feel really good about that. I feel like he just gave us all a virtual hug. So thank you for that, Zach. I got Mark on the line, Andy, Mike, Alex, and Bart. I don't think we're going to get to everybody, but we're going to give it a good old try. Let's see what Mark has to say. Mark, go ahead. Your thought today.
Hi, good morning. A great forum here this morning, too. It's nice to have both provinces going here. I'm open to environmentalism, but I don't see any solutions. All I hear is a bunch of people saying, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. Even the Green Party, same thing. Here's what we want to do. Great. How are you going to do it? It's almost like, they're smoking a fatty, listening to some Pink Floyd, and then coming out of the room after and giving us all their great ideas on environmentalism.
Mark, thank you for that. You know what? It's so much easier in Vancouver because I lived there for 2.5 years, so I know you can walk, you can take your bike, you can take public transit year round, and you can't always do that in other parts of the country. I mean, we had an entire month in February where we were minus 30. There was no wind blowing, there was no sun shining, and so it was pretty tricky to get around. So I appreciate that it is difficult to get to the solutions. What do you think they are?
Well, I think that you did a very good job in the last half hour of outlining, the move to LNG. There are ways of doing it that that get lost in the noise, I think. And again, it's not a matter of having to eliminate all, carbon products. We have to be able to limit them. Electric vehicles, or I just did an interview this morning about BCIT out here. A technical university is starting to train students on working on electric long-haul trucks. Now, there aren't a lot of them around yet, but the university sees an opportunity there and sees that is part of the future.
Oh, yeah, fast forward 50 years.
There are a lot of things that are underway right now that will help solve the problem. This concept that, we're going to die by 2030 if we don't do this is just nonsense. It's crazy.
All right. I've got Andy on the line. Do you have someone there first?
Let me go to Bruce. Bruce, good morning in New Westminster.
Hey, good morning, John. Thanks for taking my call. And Danielle, thanks for making time to join us, British Columbians, this morning.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I was actually born in Alberta, and I still have lots of family and friends there. The idea that I don't get along with Albertans, I find that to be quite surprising because I do. There are issues that we disagree on, and perhaps energy would be one, sports teams. It doesn't prevent us from sharing time together. And I do hear frequently about how Alberta's economy has taken a downturn with the decline of energy prices and that it would improve with better export opportunities. And I understand that. But the thing that gets left out of the conversation frequently is what is the cost of climate change to British Columbia or the rest of Canada or the rest of the world. I know a couple of our biggest industries here are forestry, and we're hearing mills closing recently because of forest fires or insect infestations, and those are both contributed to climate change. We hear of our fisheries being devastated because of differences in the seas and all sorts of things like that are contributed to climate change. I've spoken to people this year, and after 2 years of forest fires, less people came here to visit. So our tourism industry's hit.
Yeah, Bruce, there's no doubt that whatever is happening is having a deleterious effect on us. A story out of California this morning, Danielle, that Pacific Gas and Electric has actually shut off the power to sections of California because they're afraid that the power lines will set off brush fires
like they did last year.
So look, actually shut the power off.
Yeah, and I sympathize with that view. I guess what I would say is China has 12,000 megatons of emissions each year. We have 760 megatons of emissions. If we could get China to grow its emissions at a slower rate, or even convert all of their coal-fired plants over to LNG, then that solves a problem with us being able to take the leadership on the technology side. We don't have to shut down our economy to address the issue of global emissions. I just hope that we can get to that point. Let me get to Andy on the line. Andy, go ahead. Your thought today.
Hi, Danielle.
Hey.
I would love to send an emergency message to all the green people in the world that if we build their perfect world, it's going to use way more fossil fuels. Way more. People don't understand that because all the components that have to be made, from the solar components to the wind components to the battery components to the plastic cars, the electric cars. And after 10 years, we're going to have electric cars sitting around with dead batteries that aren't going to be moving. It's a disaster.
Andy, thank you for that. There's lots of environmental impact from mining those rare earth metals. As one of our regular listeners, or regular guest, Cody Battersill from Canada Action, likes to say, you can't build a windmill with a windmill, and you can't build a solar panel with a solar panel. You still need to have a steady supply of secure energy, often from fossil fuels, to be able to do both.
Absolutely. And again, I'm repeating myself over and over, but we just have to do things differently. We just have to reduce the amount of pollution that we're putting out. I mean, we're already heading in that direction. And again, this idea that we're all headed for doom and gloom and the end of the world is just, humans are maybe don't respond as quickly as they should, but eventually we get the idea, and I think we'll be okay.
All right. I got Mike on the line. Have you got one to go as well, John?
Let me talk to another Mike in Langley. There you are. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so, okay, I've heard from multiple sources. One volcano will put out, like, the equivalent to all of Canada's emissions for, 3 years. And, how many active volcanoes do we have? So how much is, man really doing compared to what nature is doing itself? But the main point was what the lady just said there. Canada has so much regulations. I have family and friends. I've worked in the oil sands. There is so much regulations for getting oil and natural gas out of our country. The world is not going to use less oil. So if we restrict the oil sands, they just turn to other sources like Venezuela that have no regulations, that their carbon footprint for a barrel of oil is 10 times what Canada is. So all these environmentalists that are trying to shut down Canada's developing of the oil sands and the natural gas, you're actually hurting the economy or the world because they're just turning to other places that don't have these regulations.
Mike, appreciate your thought on that. And yeah, you're right. We do have a lot of regulation. Some of that regulation is to try to keep the places, tidied up and as clean as possible.
John, I'm feeling so much better hearing from your listeners because there does seem to be a lot of common cause. One of the things I'd leave you with is that Mac Van Willigen is one of the financial analysts in the energy sector, and he started this initiative to say, we may have a 50 or 100-year transition away from fossil fuels, but Canada should be the last one to exit this market because it has the best barrel of oil with the best environmental standards, the most regulation, the most respect for human rights. We shouldn't be the first one exiting this field. We should be in there as long as the rest of the world needs it and wants it. We should be the steady supplier for it. So I hope that has some resonance there. Let me see if we can get one last call in. I think we got Mike on the line. Mike, go ahead. Your thought today.
Hello, Danielle.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, I'm calling from Alberta, from Lloydminster area here, and I'm just, we've traveled a fair bit. We've got a couple kids in Langley going to university. I've been in Nova Scotia, and we just don't understand one another. And part of my frustration is Trudeau he pits these regions against regions to get voted in. And it's not just, it's his father, it was Justin. It's all about, for them, is power. And it's just frustrating. I think that's where my dislike for Trudeau is so much, is is it really for the betterment of the country? Because I don't really feel, like right now I'm sitting on about 8 quarters of land, trees and grass. We're sucking up a pile of carbon out of the world, and it's going into the ground, grass. And they're, like, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about ice ages.
Mike, thanks for your thought on that. I'm sorry, we're just running up against time, and I think that's just it. I think the more we talk to each other, I think the more we find some common ground, John.
Let's do this again.
Let's do it.
It's good fun.
And I'll, are you signing off? You sign off for us both.
I'm signing off right now. Danielle Smith at CHQR in Calgary. Thank you, and thanks to all of her listeners in Alberta, and for us here at CKNW. It's time to go. Simi Shara Show coming up next.
Blaskin.
Focusing on the issues that matter to you.
The attention of Canadians is highest right now.
Now, the overall message of the Conservative campaign is around affordability.
Global news cuts through the election noise.
Do you feel that you could support a Liberal government in a minority situation led by Justin Trudeau?
And Singh is clearly appealing to those progressive voters.
It's your decision, Canada. Make it count. Watch Global National, listen and follow on globalnews.ca.